What's up, nerd family, and welcome to yet another panel here at JusticeCon 2021. You are in the right place today. You are having fun, I'm sure, as I've had fun all day watching all the panels yesterday and today. What great panels we've had, huh? I mean, come on, let's hear it for the Nerd Queens and Wonder Meg doing a great job bringing everyone together, and everybody who's hosted these panels. It's been an awesome day, and we're going to continue that today. Real quick, before we get started with this, I do want to remind you, of course, there is the donation button there for the AFSP. So make sure that if you haven't yet, go ahead and click that. And every little bit helps. You know, don't think, well, my little bit's not going to make that big of a difference, because every dollar collected means something for sure. And it's going to go to help people in need and people who really need it. And so please, if you can, please make a donation today. I know we're doing great, and it's all because of you. What a great fandom, and what a great group of people to come together today for JusticeCon. So now I get to do something really cool, and I get to talk to somebody very, very interesting, and a huge part of Zack Snyder's work, but not just Zack Snyder's work. And that is, of course, our guest today, Patrick Tatopoulos. Patrick, it's so good to see you, man. Thank you for being at JusticeCon.
My pleasure, Enosh. I wouldn't be anywhere else. I'd love it. I'm excited too.
Oh, well, man, we're glad to have you. And Patrick, you know, for people who aren't, I don't know, if maybe they, you know, there's some people who, you know, the director gets all the, you know, everybody knows who directed the movie. It's Zack Snyder's Justice League, right? And we all know that. And of course, you know, we know the actors. You know, I got a standee of Henry Cavill over here. You know, and I mean, we know all those people. But you are a production designer, and you are actually what makes up a lot of the things that we love in these movies and others. And just looking at your career and what you've done, I mean, I can't even take the time to list all the things, man, that you have been a part of and you have brought. I mean, I'm just looking at some of the movies that you've been a part of. It's my life in movies almost, man. Some of my favorite movies. And so as we start off today, can you just tell us a little bit about you and kind of where you come from, and maybe what a production designer does?
Well, I can tell you where I come from. It's going to be easy to know that. I come from France. First thing I got to say, and I hope everybody can understand a couple of the words I'm going to say, but that's where I started. I started being just a big fan of a horror movie, like, you know, things like this. And one day I came to the States and started to start into the world of creature makeup effect. That was my first thing. I wasn't even thinking about production design at the time. And as I started to work in that world, as a sculptor, painter, and things, I started to discover there was other jobs in the world of movies, and the production design sort of came up to my mind really quickly. As I was working on movies, I saw people that were actually designing the look of the environment, designing the vibe for the movie, and that became quickly the thing I wanted to do. So I was very, very lucky, because I started with very big movie, which usually doesn't happen. You know, I started with Independence Day, was like my first film, and as a designer, and that's crazy, because you get lucky, you work with, you meet great people like, you know, one of them like give you a chance, and you start that way. And then at that point, you're on the track, and you keep cranking, and all the way to end up meeting Zack Snyder one day and do the things I really want to do, superhero work, and what I've been doing with him for the last few years.
Yeah. Well, so as a production designer, I mean, I've heard you talk about before in other interviews about how it really is a team that comes together and makes these things work. Obviously, you know, I mean, obviously you get done watching a movie and you watch all the names scroll by, and a lot of those are just names. But as the production designer, as being someone in your position, what is your role in bringing all those things together and making sure that all those pieces work?
I think the best way to explain what the designer job is first of all, it's someone that starts very early in the process, before the DP, before some of the very important people in the process. Designers start very, very early. And the job for the designer is to listen to the director. And because we have a tendency sometimes to say, well, Patrick's vision, or this guy's vision, but don't forget, we're working for a director. At the end of the day, this is what your job is to extract from the director, ideas that he got is in his mind. And by dialogue, sometimes a very simple dialogue, he can be sitting having a coffee at a coffee shop somewhere. It doesn't have to be an official meeting, but you talk with the director and you try to understand what he's looking for. And at that point, you start triggering little ideas. I'm a concept artist. I started as a concept artist, so I do little sketches, little ideas. And when I see the director reacting, then I start understanding I'm on the right path. And at that point, your next big job is to deliver the designs, but not only that, but make sure that the design, that vision is maintained to the end of the movie. So it's creating the look of things, the look of sets, but today it's also the look of environment more than the sets, and sometimes the look of vehicles as well, like, in our case, the Batmobile, the Flying Fox, and those things. So it's a very global job, and you work with tons of people. You work with concept artists, which are the people executing the rendering for those objects, and you work with set designer, you work with tons of people, and then construction, and then you work with visual effects as well. And in a nutshell, the movie industry has changed very much for the designer. Designer were used to be people that would design the sets, and you build the sets, and then you go home. But now, it's so much visual effects. There is so much to be created that's going to be used by visual effects. The connection between the build, for example, you build a portion of a set and it has to be extended in CGI. Well, we don't do this loosely. It's working to create the whole thing, build only a portion, and work with visual effects. It's becoming a very, very exciting job, because it's a more global job now, and it got me so excited that that's what I decided I should be doing, and these days it's very fulfilling for me.
Well, that's awesome. I do want to remind everybody, it looks like we have raised over $5,800 for the AFSP, and that's awesome. Thank you all out there. And then also I want to remind everyone as well, as we continue this conversation, if you have questions for Patrick that you would like to see asked, my wife, the lovely Tiff-Tastic, is in the back right now, and she is monitoring the chat. So please just leave your question there, and we'll try to get to some of that at the end. All right.
Great.
So now with you designing stuff like that, I know for me, and I know a lot of artists, like the hardest thing for me is like once the ball starts rolling, right? And once I'm into it, that's the fun part. That's where it just seems to get easier and the ideas start flowing. Mm-hmm. Where do you start from something? Because like for example, you talked about the Batmobile, and of course I'm a toy guy. Everybody knows that I'm a toy guy. So I couldn't be here without my own Batmobile.
That's right.
Yeah, but when I look at this thing and I think about all the time that you got to design a car, and not just any car. You're designing something that is obviously going to have a lot of expectation, right, behind it. So is it harder to sometimes get started and really kind of start to visualize those things? Do you start putting them together in pieces, or do you just start tossing out concepts?
Do you know what? There's two ways of doing this. It's also two way of approaching things. I've always been a little bit on the naive side, and I still am, even with all these years of experience. Meaning, when I met Zach, and I was finishing 300 Rise of an Empire for him, and I got a phone call, and I met with Zach, and he says, "Hey, I'm doing Batman, Superman. Would you like to design that, or I'd like you to design it?" And I'm like, yeah. And my first question to him was like, is it Man of Steel, meaning the Dark Knight? Because obviously that was the last big Batman. And he said, no, this is our own Batman. So when I heard that, I said, so does that mean that we're going to create our own Batcave, our own Batmobile, our own everything? And he said, yes. And at that point, you realize you cannot freak out. You just, first of all, I was working for Zach. I hate to say that, but I wasn't working for the whole, the universe. I was working for Zach. And the only thing I had to do is to try to come up with something that would seduce him and get him excited. And I feel still to date, the first sketch of the Batmobile was what established, for me, at least on my way of working. I always start with one object. When you say, well, how do you have to design a universe? How do you start? Well, I always start with the props or one object, simple. Well, in the case of Batmobile, it wasn't a simple object, but as I was drawing that sketch, and I brought it to Zach, and Zach said, this is kind of what I want. We're going in a good place. I knew on developing that car, I was actually developing the world of Batman, because that aesthetic was reflected everywhere in his world. So for me, as soon as I realized that Batmobile was what Zach wanted, I knew that I could carry on and design the rest of the world of Batman. And at the time it was, Man of Steel, Superman. We had a world for him already established. So my big job was the Batman world. And once I knew the Batmobile was there, then, like you said, I could breathe. And I was lucky enough that the first jet was pretty much it. And we just kept going. And of course, again, when you say how you design a Batmobile, where you bring other people that help you go beyond the sketch and start developing the car in 3D engineering-wise. You bring someone that's going to build that car. Dennis McCarthy built the Batmobile for us. He's an incredible builder. He built all the Fast and Furious car. He took on the car and he built it. And we built it together. And that was an amazing thing. At that point, like I said, I could move on and start thinking about the rest of the world for Batman. But I understood. Zach said a few things. He said, I want him bold. He's older. He's a big guy. I mean, whatever he told me back then were just a few words, but those words really hit me hard. And I said, okay, I think I see what he's talking about. There was the Dark Knight Return from Frank Miller, which I knew was in his mind. And that sort of sets up the Batman he was going for. And, he used a few words, but words that really hit you. And then at that point, you know what to do. You know how to go. Zach is not micromanaging. He gives you the hints and then you go to town with this. And that's been the experience with him. That's why I love it so much.
Well, what I love about this Batmobile, and I was telling you yesterday, so I got to see this Batmobile up close, which is something that I'll just tell you all, if you ever get a chance to do it, it's one thing to see it on screen or have a toy of this car. But I got to go out to the Warner Brothers lot a couple years ago, and I got to see the car. And, and it was funny because, it's in this hall of all the other Batmobiles, right? So you got the 89 Batmobile, and you've got, the Tumbler, and you've got, even the Batman Forever vehicle. And I'm looking at all these Batmobiles. Your car looks the most real. Like it just has a real world feel. And I love that about Zach, that he really tried to incorporate that into his movies. Like, what if these things were in real life? Because, you look at the 89 Batman, and it's a great car. It's an iconic looking car. It's very comic book like, it's like, it's cool, but it's that. And then you had the Tumbler, which was almost kind of the opposite end of that, which it was almost like, well, this is a tank, this is stuff like that. But your car, it combines the best of that, I feel. It's just great. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I mean, I just need to say that, when I designed the car to start with, it was a clean car, if you may. I designed the car like a brand new car. And Zach quickly told me, I want this thing. He's not cleaning, he's washing his car every weekend. He has other things to do, which I thought was the best thing he could have. I mean, the idea is like, this car has been used. And beyond that, we created panels on the car that are not the same color. Like, he's fixed them. He's done a bunch of things. Mm-hmm. And that whole concept was really driven by him. My first thing is like, wow, I'm sure I make it look beat up and stuff. And he said, yes. And to me, that's the big difference. You're right. When you walk into this, in the Museum of Warner, and there's two things about, I think, the car, and it makes me really happy, is it's not all about size, but that car is bigger than the other one. It's huge. It's bold.
Oh, yes.
And when you see the footprint, it's hard to see on the picture because you're a little forward, but the footprint of the car is like as wide as a bus. That's why we couldn't drive it everywhere, So that's one thing. And second thing is, like you said, yes, the car feels like it's driven, it's been used. When we catch up with the life of Batman in our movie, he's already had the Batmobile. He's already used it. And I thought that was the best thing. And again, that sort of set up the whole language of Batman. It's not a precious little, hipster guy. He's a guy that's got character. He's badass, and that's what it is. And that's exciting. And I'm really proud of that car, I tell you. I like you said, a couple of things, you're not always proud of your work, but this thing is a signature thing for me that I will never forget. It means a lot to me because it's exactly what you said. At least my intent was that, is respectfully go back to the origin of Batmobile, like the far back cockpit, not a cockpit in the front, like the classic look of the Corvette, if you may, where the car is like the cockpit is sitting back. The wings on the back are, to me, the Batmobile, the Batman cape, in some way, the language of that. And then what the Tumbler brought is that kind of military vibe and thing. And we had to go that way because It's not a toy for displaying sexiness or anything. This is here to be used. And so that's the last thing. And I think between this and all the thing we did, and you may not have seen everything in the movie yet because it was not used, but there's tons of things this car can do that you haven't seen. It's what I love about Batmobile. When we engineer it for the first movie, we think of things that Zach may not need to use for the first movie or the second. The fact that the car raises on its suspension so it becomes an off-road car was the biggest thing for me. And he used it on the second film. I was so pumped about this. There was a use for it. There was no use for it on the first film. The design of a car, and again, to go back to this, to me, the most important something like that is all the ideas you put in it that will not be revealed in the movie, but maybe revealed in a trilogy. Like my dream trilogy of like 3 Justice League, well, that's, I gotta say it. It's important. That's in my mind.
So what you're saying is there were possibly ideas and thoughts behind some other things that we haven't even seen yet.
Right. Exactly.
Gotcha.
You got to be ready for that. And all those things have to come and they have to be ready to go. No, okay. On Justice League, he changed the car a bit. But again, he didn't change it like he got a new car. It's a new version of the car. It's the same car, tweaked. Yes. It's our Batman. It's a guy that fixes things, put things together. He fixes the flying fox, which been sitting in a hangar forever. He makes it happen. And of course, Cyborg later helps us a little bit as well. But the whole concept that this guy is a hands-on guy. He's not just like a poser or anything, I love that.
Oh yeah, for sure. The Batman is actually tinkering with his stuff. He actually knows what he's doing, and it's not just set. It's not like he just had somebody create it for him, and he's just driving something somebody else made for him. He's in there doing the work, and I love that. I love that's one of the parts that I love about Justice League is that he's working on the flying fox.
Yeah,
he's up there working on it. It's not just Alfred putting stuff together for him because the stuff's bigger than life. It's bigger than just anything else.
And when you work on something, you see that it's been worked on. Again, some of the ideas of Zach was saying, but maybe it's great for a couple of panels on the car that are not the same color. And again, that kind of thing. You look at the car when it's flying down Pozanov in Russia for the final sequence, you don't see those details. But they're there. When you need to see them, they're there for you, Yeah. And that's great.
Well, I know I heard that there weren't even wheels for this thing. You had to get special wheels for this? I got
to give credit to, okay, so this is it. When you start designing a car like this and you got your car, the next step is to get someone to build it. And I started to talk to a bunch of builders in LA and outside of LA and send them the design, and they looked at it and say, oh, great. Then they got a week or 2 weeks, I remember, to start thinking how to build this thing so I really could come back with a plan. Some of the guys said, Patrick, I may not get the size of those wheels, but I could get something pretty close, or maybe we double the wheels on the back. And I say, okay, cool, thank you. And there was a lot of that stuff because they couldn't get to this car. And then Dennis McCarthy came on board and say, well, we got to find those wheels. And he didn't give up until he found those wheels. Actually, no, not the wheels, the tires. And the tires are from Israel. They're actually tractor tires that you don't find anywhere else on the planet. He tracked them, had them shipped from Israel. Obviously, when you put tractor tires on the Batmobile, the Batmobile cannot turn, cannot do anything. So he actually sculpted the tires. So they became, we went through tests of the car where you could see the car bouncing around because of those original tires. There was so much engineering in there, but he got the tire the exact same size that I had them on the design. When you work with someone like that doesn't give up on saying, it's going to be hard, I can't find something, that's how you get to things like the Batmobile. It's not just about your design. It's about people that make that design possible, and that's a huge deal. And that's how it works. And never give up. And say, I want those tires. They have to be those tires. And I didn't even have to do that. He just went for it. He tried them. He says, I'm not going to give you somewhere. And that's the kind of people you love to work with.
Well, that's really cool. So you're one of the things that I've seen about you is you're a big Batman fan in general. Did you feel like, and I don't want to just spend time on the Batmobile, but like in designing stuff for Batman, whether it be the Flying Fox or the Batmobile, these iconic, things, having to come up with, these concepts for the Bat Cave, like you said, and for various pieces on that. Did you feel pressure just as from a fan standpoint of thinking like, what are people going to think of these design, like designing things that are true to kind of the concepts that people have of these things and these places, but at the same time creating your own footprint, creating your own take on these things.
Listen, if you're a fan, I'm sure you got somewhere deep in your mind a concept for the Batmobile, the way you would like to see it. We all have a vision of it. Of course, again, let's go back to the director. We worked together, we talked, and then I went and started drawing this thing. But what I want to say is, like, you cannot worry about everybody out there. It's impossible not to, or it's impossible not to worry, because you are going to be, you know, I look on the internet and people say, this is the coolest Batmobile ever, or I don't like this Batmobile. So you cannot do this. You're just going to have to first please one person. That person is the director. Second person is yourself, or maybe first yourself. Be happy with something you're doing and make sure you please the person that's going to make the movie. You know, I'm going to go back to something completely different. But when I designed the Godzilla 98, my version of Godzilla, which is completely outside the realm of the Godzilla, I love the Godzilla. I have a huge respect for the original one. But I did something different because my director told me I want this thing to go 200 miles per hour in the streets of New York. It has to be this. I sent it. We went to Japan and showed the Godzilla to Toho, and the father of Godzilla was there. And they looked at it and said, we love it. This is Godzilla. What I'm saying is, after that, what are you going to do? You just met the people that are at the roots of it, the father of Godzilla or the father of Batman, the person that directs the Batman. You're going to go to town with it. You cannot be scared. I've always been very naive about that. Like I said, it's not like I'm sure it's going to be great. It's more like I have one thing I do. I'm not worried about this. When the movie comes out and you have reaction, you start saying, oh, damn, people didn't like it. But what can you do? Give it your heart, give it 100%, and make, again, the person at the reign be excited about it. And that's as far as you go. It's Zach's vision. In this case, it's Zach's vision. It's his world. It's his Batmobile. It's his Batcave. I've designed them for him, but it's his world. And if he's pleased with it and he packages it the way he always does in an incredible film, that's as far as you go. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And, you know, and again, don't look at that like I'm so certain that what I'm designing is great. It's the opposite of that. But I just can't worry about it. I have to worry about the people that I'm working for. And of course, after that, I cross my fingers all day long, hoping the fans are going to love it. Yeah. Because I want them to be happy. The same way I know Zach wants the fans to be happy. And he cares about what they think. I do care immensely, but they're all going to have different ideas. We all have different ideas. Sure. So you got to deliver for one person. That's your leader.
Yeah. Well, I've got a Batmobile collection of various Batmobiles through the years and stuff, and it's always cool to see each new incarnation of the Batmobile, and it's funny because one of the things that I love about Zach, and I can even tell with you talking about it, is like going back to the source material, right? Going back to what's there. I know a few months ago when we got our first look at Robert Pattinson's Batmobile, right, a lot of people were complaining about that because it didn't have what people felt was this stylish Batmobile, you know, kind of aesthetic to it. Yet I found myself at first kind of going, well, I don't know, it's kind of plain. But then when you go back to the comics and you realize in the 80s, like Batman was just driving a plain Lamborghini or a plain Stingray. It was just black, and, you know, it might have had a little bat symbol here or there, but it was pretty much just a muscle car, right. You know? But I think it's really cool to see your vision of the Batmobile and these other things, because you've really taken your place in exactly. Now this.
And yes. You know, the Robert Pattinson Batman, the Batman, the car, to me is fantastic. I looked at it, I saw it not live, but I saw it and I said, okay, here you go. This is a drastic change again, but it's what you need. You need to reinvent things. You take chances when you do that. There are people that are going to nail you. You know, coming after the Tumbler was a tough one. The Tumbler was a very big success. It's a great looking car. It's a great design. When you come after that, you know, you're going to be in a position. It's the same thing with the new one. It's like, well, hold on, that's not a Batmobile. Well, yes, it is that Batman's Batmobile. So just at the end of the day, the Batmobile is only an extension of the character that's created by these directors, that's created for that version of Batman. Mm-hmm. And he couldn't have had, the classic Batmobile in there. He had to be that type of Batmobile. And I think they've done a great job. It looks fantastic. And, you know, when you look at all of them, they all have a place, and you can feel the era almost. You can feel not yes. only just, you know, the stylistics changes, things that may sound a little strange today on some of the, you know, the earlier one. But for them, they were the perfect Batmobile. But at the end of the day, listen, I don't want to talk about the Batmobile only, but at the end of the day, I got to tell you something. When you go to the museum and your baby is sitting there somewhere among the other one, there's only 6 when I did mine. I think there's 7 now with a new one.
Okay, yeah.
Only 7 Batmobiles ever. I mean, what a great honor. What a great thing to happen in your life, It's
well, I'll tell you what, you definitely deserve it. You've created something just in that. I mean, the reason why we talk about it so much is just because it's such a huge part of who Batman is, right. And a part of those movies. Now, that kind of leads me to the next thing I wanted to ask you is that, so you worked on BVS, you've kind of established this world, you start working on Justice League, you got these ideas, these things are happening. So obviously, while the rest of us are out here, getting, pictures here and there and seeing for the first time these little things, but we don't see all the work that's going into it. I love watching behind the scene things where it shows how people created things. And, but you spent all this time making these things, designing them, getting them, together. What is that feeling like for you? Even after all these films that you've worked on and all these projects, do you still get that rush when you finally see what you've made come to life like that?
Okay, don't forget one thing, and I'm saying that because you would say, okay, you're blasé, you've built those things, you were there, you were there when they shot them, you build those things, you saw the actor, you saw everything. Watch the movie, it's great, it's not great, whatever. But I got to tell you something. At least for me, when I sit in the theater and I'm watching the film, or maybe in my couch for Justice League recently, when I watch it, I forget I'm a part of it. It's kind of weird. I mean, it's not exactly that, but it is, because between your design, the things you create for the movie, the director comes in, shoots the way he wants to shoot those elements, and he starts creating his chemistry for the thing. It's not just you said. And then it's getting cut, and then visual effect comes in. What you're seeing at the end is just your thing in there. It's just a tiny little thing. I mean, you could say, okay, the design is a huge amount of things you build for a movie or design, but at the end of the day, it's been taken and it's been transformed. And something that's just, I would say, maybe not for the Batmobile, but an inert object, like a set. Suddenly you have characters in there that bring life to this set, that give sense, that make sense to these sets. Even if when you create your design, you think of your characters, obviously. You design a set that makes sense for them. But when you see it with a character inside, it's almost like suddenly, but by the way, suddenly what's important is the character, it's not your set. But you're excited that they're functioning into your world, for what you've done, but that's how it changes. So because you're following a story, you're not following a bunch of sets one after the other, a bunch of vehicles one after the other, your attention is into the characters and the story, and then suddenly you're like transported. And I'm like a kid, I am. And you say you collect toys, I do too. Yeah. I've got my stuff. My office is full of things, and that's the way I am. So I'm still a kid when I watch a movie. I'm very receptive, very naive. And I'm not part of the filmmaking when I watch it. No, I mean, unless it's a disaster and I'm freaking out because when it's been taken and it turns into something that's fantastic. Yeah, and I think it's good to be like this because it's the right attitude. If you look at things like, okay, I wish this was that, I was this. And there's always a little bit of that once in a while. I say, I wish we saw more of this, because that's inevitable. But that's not your film again. So, but at the end of the day, you gotta enjoy the experience.
Well, your designs too. I mean, just from somebody watching the film, and like I was sharing with you earlier. I'm a musician, so I know what it's like to kind of create something, put something together, and you watch it come from its infancy to when you finally record that thing and you put it out. And I've done little things like that. Nothing on your level, obviously, but your creations become characters in these movies, your backgrounds and stuff. So like just behind you, I got just really small on my screen, but I encourage anybody blow up the screen so you can see what's behind Patrick, because there you've got that wraith or like that death. Yeah. Behind you. That's part of the Gotham City police station that Batman is standing atop. And that whole moment when we see that scene, your creation there, it's not just him standing on a corner of a building. It adds that much more weight to that scene, so as you were talking about that, I'm thinking about that your designs, your backdrops, whatever it is you're creating, it really does become a character right alongside these, because it's telling the story.
You hope so. Because, listen, also at the end of the day, I think for something special for me is because I come from the creature world, from the character world. That's how I started. I think my vehicles, for example, are creatures. They are not just vehicles. I look at them as animals. They're animalistic. They're organic. And I think that's part of what. So when we talk with Zach, I remember that moment we talked about the police station, the rooftop, the idea of having, I don't remember exactly what the conversation was, the idea, but we need to have our Batman in some sort of a gargoyle at some point. We need this. Those are the classic, comic book things, and we didn't really have that. And so the idea came up, and of course, we didn't want a gargoyle, typical like Gothic gargoyle, because we've seen this before. It's been done great by Tim Burton and everybody else. Mm-hmm. I saw the figure of the death, seemed to fit really well, and having on top of it. And you see the shield, all those things were actually Zach wanted the shield. I was developing something a bit more organic and thing. But this stuff, it becomes a character, but they are actually characters. They're like the souls of the police station. They've been there forever. And, in the case of those characters to death, I think for me, they were more about bringing back part of some of the past. We're living in a modern world in our Batman. It's not, it's not a period piece. And so having a sense of history on the building, maybe, the fact that you go up there, you see Batman connected to the past as well with this. Mm. I think it's important. And to me, it's also iconic moments. I knew Zach was going to have him walk on the gargoyle, and I thought, it has to be a moment in a film. And when he mentioned it, I was super excited. But yeah, talking about the sets being characters, I don't know if I would say the sets are characters, but they are an imprint of the characters themselves. I mean, when you do the apartment of Cyborg, or you do the glass house for Batman, or you do anything for any characters, Flash's apartment, which is very kind of funky and all those apartments have to be created based on what the character is about at that time of its life, and wherever it is. And that's creating a character. It's the production design, it's the set decorator, the people that come in there and bring all. This is another job. The set decorator are super important as well. They bring those little touches, something sitting on the shelf. Maybe sometimes it's a request from Zach, says, I would like to see this there because I know I'm going to see it somewhere. Mm-hmm. All that stuff define a character. I'm coming into your room. I get to understand who you are to a certain extent. I won't know exactly, but I get a sense of what you like, what's important for you. Well, that's the same thing in a film. So it's the exciting part of the set. There's a design of things, the look of things, and then there's also the soul that comes in with all those people working on creating that texture within the set. And that's super exciting.
With Zack Snyder's Justice League, so you obviously you were working on it, putting it together, and then we obviously we know the story, of what happened, and Zack was no longer on the film. I'm guessing now. I'm guessing because some people said that they didn't. But I'm guessing you watched 2017. You watched the 2017 movie.
Yeah.
And there were things redone in there. Were there things that were not in that movie that you were disappointed on, or that you were looking forward to?
Absolutely. There was so much stuff. Well, you can tell. Have you seen it yourself? Yeah. Yeah. It was a remanipulation of material that existed, and also selection of things that they didn't feel at the time was important, or Judge didn't feel were important for the film, or at least the version he was doing. So it was, it was inevitably very disappointing. And this is not even a judgment on whoever did or whatever. At this point, the movie I was working on, the movie I crafted a portion of was for Zach. So when Zach was not at the helm anymore at the end, and somebody else took over, this is going to change. And I even found myself, again, you don't leave the ship. And when I was asked to come back and do some more sets for the other version, I was like, okay, those sets were drifting away from the vision to a certain extent. It was like, for example, like the spa room of Batman in his Batcave, the moment where he hangs with, the character changed and his world changed a little bit. Yeah. And that was, that was really not the best. It felt very difficult, but we did it. I felt, we were assigned to do it, you did it. And I didn't know how this whole thing would end up at the end. I wasn't very clear about what the outcome of this, by the way. We're going back to reshoot. It's not Zach. What's going on? Just before we were going to reshoot, it was going to be Zach. And, with the drama in Zach's life, all that, I just didn't feel, there's no time to question. You just finish your job.
Yeah.
But looking at the movie after, the biggest things for me was not that the design were not, there was tons of stuff that was not in there. And you know that because you saw Zach's version. But there was also a tone that was different. And there was a visual tone that was different. Not just the tone of the story that clearly was drastically different. The characters were different. They were not the people you drafted the film with, but there's a visual tone that changed. Like all the look of Pozanov at the end, the texture, the colors, and that sounds like an irrelevant issue when there's so much more issues in the project, in the movie, when things like that happen. But for the designer, I felt all the world that was created were tweaked to a point where I didn't recognize anything, and he didn't follow up the Batman Superman we created. It didn't feel like it was part of the lineup of this. It disconnected completely. So yes, I was very disappointed. And I was like, okay, well, then that's what it's going to be. Like 2 years of work on making this, seriously, with all the heart that I had in this and the people with me had in this. You just feel like suddenly you don't, and so, but I guess I was like, okay, that's what it's going to be. And I met with Zach. We did a couple of things also after with it. And then when I heard that this was going to be remanipulated and maybe extended and everything, I was beyond ecstatic. That's why I'm here today.
Yeah.
How happy I am that this thing has gone back to the place it was meant to be.
Well, I think that's the real story of this movie. I mean, it's kind of unprecedented in how these things have happened. Right. But it's a story of redemption for everybody, for Zach, for the actors, for you guys who worked on the film. And I've loved the fact that Zach has been very vocal about people who worked on the film and others that, have fought for you guys to see your work, shown. What
a rewarding thing. You're absolutely right. I mean, you could look at it in one thing. First thing, we're all super excited that he could make his movie and do it the way he wanted to do it. And a story. However, for all of us that worked on it, when you sit down and you watch the film and you see, oh my God, I forgot we did this. This is cool. Oh my God, we built this whole Flying Fox airplane with like 3 layers, 3 levels in it, which you didn't see any of that on the first movie. So it's like the camera forced itself to not move. Why? There was like layers. There was like a set and then I watched Zach's version and suddenly I see Batman coming from the cockpit going down. This is only one example. But so above and beyond all those things, all this, the happiness you have by seeing that the friend you work with that made this movie funny, that get to do his movie. And in a sense, he brings back all the things he wanted to see in the film and they're there. And so what a rewarding thing for us to be able to finally see on the screen the things we've created. So yeah, that's mad. That's fantastic.
Let's talk a minute about, so obviously Darkseid is in this film. There's a whole other world there with Apocalypse and the nightmare sequences and things like that. I remember the feeling that I got when I first saw that shot that I was shocked was in a trailer of Darkseid and Granny Goodness and Desaad all walking. Can you talk a little bit about kind of the thought process? Because it has sparked us now to want to see more. We everybody wants to see more now. It's like we got this tease of what the future could be, and who knows, maybe still will be. But what were your thought processes in designing some of that stuff?
Just to be all fair and frank about this section with Darkseid and Desaad, all this section in their world was very much created by Zach on the last jet of it with visual effects. I had little involvement in this, and I wish I did more. But at the time, we're both working on different things. So for this, we've established the anti-life equation. That was something I worked on when we were doing the movie. So this all established was done to create a statistic for it already. But the actual scene you're referring to was totally created by Zach and the visual effect group. DJ Desjardins, which worked with Zach for so many years. I don't know if you know, the visual effects supervisor in that group. I'd carried on the language. Like another example to tell you, do you remember seeing the tank? You remember seeing the tank in the movie as well. Yeah. I haven't designed the tank. Frank Miller's tank is the tank you're seeing in there. Yeah. But visual effects sort of grab that and brings on the texture that you have created for the film. So this whole part you talk about, I was actually a little remote on that, and regrettably, but we had already established a texture, a vibe, and a look for this earlier, and remanipulating the elements that were created. Zach created those scenes that were necessary. So those are the scenes that were, I don't recall, were part of the original Justice League. The nightmare sequence, however, was on Batman, Superman, and I love the look, the texture, the tone, the desert, the city, all that stuff was established back then, and you had to create those new scenes in there. But our world was created already back then. And it's great because you hear people watch Batman, Superman saying, "But what is this? What is this?" And he does that all the time. There's little hints and things that seem to be, for us the fans, we know it's going to mean something at some point. But for some people, they're like, "Well, okay, this is great. It looks amazing, but what does that mean?" And then Justice League's come in. So So just to answer your question, clearly this was really drafted within the post-production at that time with the VFX group. So that's
and now I not to get too much away from Zack Snyder's Justice League, because I know a lot of people are interested in that. That's what the day is. But just a little bit more about you, because not only have you had this great career and affected a lot of what we've seen on screen with so many things. And look, I encourage all of you, if you don't know or you are not aware, go look up Patrick and see some of the stuff that he's worked on, because I think it'll really blow your mind when you just see the list of things that he's worked on. But we kind of talked about it a little bit yesterday. My three boys, especially my middle son, he's my son Landon. He used to, I told you, he used to be afraid of the dark, and he was deathly afraid of the dark, and he was scared of being in his room, and he would see these things and would be really scared of them. But one of the things that really helped him, and actually my other two boys, with having some of those childhood fears, was they watched the show Face Off, where they saw how people create these monsters and these creatures and how they're not real, and everything. And they were and they've always been fascinated by that show. We used to sit and watch that show, and you were on 2 seasons of that show, and that's also how you met your wife. You want to tell us a little bit about that? Obviously, that show has some good meaning for you.
Huge meaning for me, obviously. It was, it's interesting. This is why I did actually 2 seasons only. This was something that I took not lightly, but when I got called to do this, I thought, that could be fun. I mean, between movies, I'm going to jump on that. And first of all, and then one day I met my wife there. She was sitting across from me. Nobody introduced us for about a full hour. And I was like, who is this person? I was like, okay, she's beautiful, but who is she? And we never got introduced and then that was the day we're going to shoot. We're in a room on the side and nobody talks to us. And then we jump on stage and we start shooting. And I'm like, oh, she's the host. And that was that. It was the most incredible thing. We did 2 seasons together, and we came together after those seasons. But there was probably chemistry already during the show. But the great thing about this thing is as we started, at least I started kind of lightly. I was thinking, well, this is kind of fun. I realized this was a very great show because it was a reality show, like there is many of them, but it was very much based on the artistry. The people in there, it was not about drama, and there was not so much drama in there. There was tension, there was things that you would expect when you have to do something in 3 days. And the greatest thing about this show is most of all the candidates that did this are now in the industry doing makeup effect for movies. If you check them out, especially the one that won, but not only the guys that won or the girls that won, they all became permanent members of the industry in the makeup effect world. So clearly there was great talents there. And it's always amazing to see a new artist, newcomers, like how they develop things, how they think. It's very enlightening. So I feel I've learned as much as I've learned during the process. And I'm not keen on judging people's work. I just want to pump them up. I want to make them excited. I want to make them do more. My whole judge situation was more about seeing the things they had done and try to, even if they were not the first or they would lose that week, to keep making them feel good about themselves. And my wife Mackenzie was the same. There was never it was never trying to hurt people, or just, this is where the drama comes on some of the reality shows. They get really tough. I didn't want that. I didn't want that, because if this had happened to me when I started in this industry, I probably would have quit. I wasn't strong back then at the very beginning, and I would not have been able to handle this kind of criticism. So I think it's important to respect that with people. Be positive all the time. That show still means a lot. I don't know why he ended up being canceled. I think it's a change of, because he was doing so well. And I know it's still in the air, interestingly, a little bit like Justice League, where fans out there saying, hey, we need this back. We need, not to the same scale, obviously, but it's great to see fans out realizing that they have power and they can make things happen, and they push and they push. It hasn't happened quite yet on the face-off, but I mean, again, the story of the Justice League and Zach proves that, the people, the fans, that people have power and they can do things, they can change things. Mm-hmm. So let's hope that Face Off comes back, because it's still a great show. I'm glad you kids love it.
They did. We'd sit down with the whole family and just watch that show, and like I said, it really helped them get over some of those fears. Because you see these things in movies and TV shows as a kid, and you guys make it look so real. You make things just so tangible, that especially nowadays, I mean, like I showed my kids Jaws for the first time, when they were little, and they just laughed. And that's when I realized that, like, a lot of the stuff that I grew up with was kind of like looking back at some of the black and white movies of, Dracula and Frankenstein and all those things, which also you worked on a Frankenstein. But yeah, so, looking at those things, and I looked at those things as a kid and went, oh, well, that's not scary. Well, they were looking at stuff that I thought was scary in the 80s, with, the Nightmare on Elm Streets and stuff like that, and thought, they would laugh about that. But some of the stuff that comes out nowadays with computer, graphics and stuff, it does look very real. So yeah. That helped out immensely with that. And now, now I go in his room, he's got all the lights off, and he's a horror movie buff.
That's now. It.
He's a horror movie buff.
This stuff changed him. I'm glad. This is cool. Another adept of horror movies. That's fantastic.
Well, speaking of our better halves and people that we love, I am going to take this time and bring in my better half, the lovely Tiff-Tastic. Hello, Tiff.
Hello, Enosh. Hello, Patrick. It is so good to see you.
Good to
and
see
I
you.
too am a huge fan of Face Off, and I loved you and Mackenzie on that show. We would watch it as a family, and it just, like I said,
that's great.
My youngest would even like pause the movie or the show we were watching and get really close and be like, that's really good makeup.
Fantastic. Well, she's going to be really happy to hear that too. No, this is really a show that means a lot to us. It's obviously, it was life-changing for us at multi-level, of course.
Oh, definitely. And I also love just seeing the relationship with her and her dad too, because I know her dad is in this business, and so just to kind of see like her looking at people's work and then dad giving kind of some constructive criticism, and I just thought that was awesome as well.
No, it's great. It's great. The whole family coming together. No, that's what I think the show was so popular. There was something very genuine about it, very friendly, and kids friendly as well. Although there were monsters, like you're saying rightly. Yeah. It was an introduction to creatures through an angle of like almost like Halloween. You put things together. That's how you're going to look. And I think he made a big difference. It's a show the parents could see with the kids. And that's what most people were telling Mackenzie. They say, we love that show because that's one show I can see with my kid. They love it. I love it. And so, that was great.
And actually, with that line of questioning, I do have a question.
All right.
It was from Charlie Harper in the questions. He said, a big fan of your work. Can you suggest some things for a person who is aspiring to work with concept art industry?
To work into the world of concept art, but there's not too much to advise. Just say, if you want to, when I started in the industry, I just put a portfolio together, came in LA, and crossed my fingers. I'm not going to tell you the story. I would take like another 3 hours, but that's a funny story. I'll tell you.
I'm sure Zach won't mind. We'll put Zach on hold. And we'll just listen.
Like, okay, Face Off is great, but come on, let's talk about.
We'll have to have you on our channel sometime where you can go as long as you want. There you go.
Fantastic. So. the best thing is expose your work. I mean, look at what's out there. Get a sense of what people do. My biggest advice to everybody, it's always been that one, is you're going to look at people's work and say, wow, I wish I could do this. I could do that like that. I wish I had that style. Don't do that. What you need to do is to stay yourself. And I'm not saying this like to have a beautiful sentence out there. The thing is, there's a lot of great artists out there. And some of them have a similar style. And they're absolutely mind-boggling. They're really strong. They're beautiful work. If someone wants to get in the industry, you have to have an angle. That's your personal angle. So whatever you do, create your own style. Maybe you already have that style. Don't try to become the other ones out there. That's, to me, the best advice. Because you cannot be part of the pack. The people that are out there, that have a style, they're already established. They will have a career for the rest of their life, most probably. You're new, just bring something new to the table. Don't match. Do your thing and get better technically. Practice, develop. Use ZBrush, all those new tools that are offered to people now to create. I would say, I would recommend to work in 3D, but never drop the sketching. Keep working on your sketching. It's important for someone to be able to sketch in 2 seconds in front of a director when you work with them. So my biggest thing is like stay yourself. Get better and better, but stay with your own style. Key element for me.
And that's great advice. Thank you so much, Patrick. I also have another question. The screen name was just RT, and they said, architect here was really excited when I saw Miles Farnsworth House influence as the second Bruce Wayne residence. What was the thought behind that choice?
Looking at the aesthetic we had developed for Batman world, it became clear, Miles Van der Rohe is one of the favorite artists of Zach. I mean, he used the building for the Daily Planet in Chicago. He's always been very much in love with that aesthetic. We actually went to visit the house, the glass house, and what a trip. It was amazing. So we knew the influence is clear. It's obvious. Actually, the concept, if I recall, back then was to say, hey, maybe the Wayne family had Miles Van der Rohe create a glass house for them. So basically, the design I did for the glass house had to be really in the line of Miles Van der Rohe glass house as well. So when you look at the two things, say, well, obviously it's an influence, and yes, it's an open influence. The fact that it was black, the fact that the textures inside, and it was roomier, because the Miles Van der Rohe house is almost like a display house. There's very little space in there. It's pretty amazing. We had to extend it, make it bigger, so we always work looking at architecture. We always have influences. When you work in a movie design, you have influence. I'm a big fan of Calatrava, Zaha Hadid, some great architects, and inevitably they've influenced me. So some of those things are going to come out. But in the case of the glass house, Zach was really keen on that kind of direction. The great thing about the glass house, and the cubic form, the rectangular shape, the simplicity, was following the concept of what the Batman was. Zach's Batman was that. And that concept I took into the Batcave. That's why I was always saying when I designed the Batcave, the idea was it's not an operatic Batcave. It's a cave that the Batman. See, I'm going to say Zach. I was going to change the world of Batman and say Zach. Zach for me is Batman, so maybe that's what it is. But basically, I wanted to use this concept of rectangular shapes into a cave, in the sense that Batman hasn't transformed the cave, hasn't carved it. He's just positioned himself within this and put elements together. So that language carried on through the Batcave. If you look at the elements, they're very much like the glass house again. So it was a hint. It took us there, and then the whole language carried on from that point.
I think it's interesting too, because like Batman is such a secretive character, and here he is in this glass house.
It's that's trippy, but it's also is very isolated. I mean, and you see the lounge the place is in. It's actually a private property, obviously, and the fact that he's one with nature. I did like that aspect of him. He's one with nature. He's within nature. He's the footprint of Batman with the elements is very minimalistic. And that's why I said the cave itself, it's not like he's carved it into like some sort of an amphitheater. It used the cave. He built his building where they fit. He didn't force the cave to change. The whole language of accepting and putting himself in the environment is great. Maybe this is it. This is when he's in his own world, he's open. The manner, as you've seen it, the traditional manner which we travel in, is the traditional version of the Batman. You know, the solid building, the elegance and the classicism. And I really like the idea of the glass house because the exposition is fantastic because it's alone. You know, sometimes when you create a glass box and you put someone in the middle of it, it's actually more isolating. Then you have to look through a window into something that's overly furnished or whatever. So I think this isolation is even more drastic. And you see it in the shot of Justice League. When the glass house is there, that's all you see on the lake. That little light is one thing. That's isolation.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's good stuff.
I have one last question. I know that we're getting closer to our time, but it kind of this kind of opens it up for you, Patrick. It's the name was IMDG, and it says, "I love your creativity and enthusiasm. Which film production designs inspired you in your work?"
Which movie inspired me for my work, or inspired me my work? I'm sorry.
Which films and production designs? Like which ones did you like, and which ones inspire you?
Okay, the one that I like film-wise, I'm a big Terry Gilliam fan, and all the aesthetic of Terry Gilliam I liked. I always love those extreme textures, those crazy sets. For me, the one that spearheaded me to, I'm a big fan of the German expressionism. I love the Murnau movies, the original Nosferatu, those things. I mean, the German expressionistic, if you look at the shapes, they fit our Batman. It's very bold. It's very stark. It's made of shadows and light. I love that. The first movie I designed that was in that language was Dark City for Alex Proyas years ago. Dark City, for me, was the spearheading thing into the world of production design in some ways, the way I wanted to design movies. I had done Independence Day, but Independence Day in some ways was a big feast of craziness, but Dark City was more my angle. And I feel when you look at Batman, Superman, and Justice League, it's more in that wave. And this is why when Zach offered me to do the movie, I was so over the moon, because that's what I want to design. That's that kind of stuff. There's a classicism, there's a darkness. I'm comfortable there. I love that world. Really textured, intricate, and yeah. So I would say German expressionism in general. So in the filmmaking or in architecture as well. You know, that's kind of my roots in some ways.
Well, that is that's great. Well, thank you everyone for your questions, and thank you, Tiff, for
yeah, thank you.
Not a problem. There was more questions, but we don't have enough time, so.
Well, it's good to know.
We'll have to have him on again and get some more questions in.
Exactly. We'll just have to talk to you again sometime.
Let's do it on Poindexter.
Yes. This hour has gone by so fast. I tell you what, it's gone by so fast. Thank you so much, Patrick, for your time. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for all that you've done. Thank you for just your creations and just being that inspiration for so many of these things that we love, and putting these things into a physical form for us to enjoy. It means a lot.
Thank you, guys. It's been great fun. Let's do it again sometime soon. And, all right. See you soon.
Yes. To everyone watching, we have gone over $6,000 in donations. You guys are fantastic. Thank you all for what you're doing. Continue giving. Don't forget here in just a few minutes, Zach Snyder will be joining the Nerd Queens and Wonder Meg. And so you're going to want to be able to watch that, because I hear that's going to be a great discussion. And anytime Zach shows up, you know what, you just got to be prepared. You never know what's going to happen. Exactly. Never know what's going to happen. So thank you, Patrick. Thank you to everyone. Thank you everyone at Justice Con. And we continue. And don't forget, tomorrow, day 2 with Army of Darkness. We're going to go out now with a little video about the Batmobile. Fitting. We'll see you guys next time.
Guys, I need you guys to get out. I got the car coming down the middle. I need it all clear.